You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry. Featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the Lovaniverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you.
Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host, William J. Rogers, and today I'm here with solo artist and host of the Metal Robot podcast, Mr. Tom McKay. How's it going, Tom?
Whoa, I'm here. It's amazing. I love the work you've done with the place. Amazing.
Yes, well, the work that you've done with the place is pretty cool too. Yeah. We're in parallel dimensions here.
Yeah, I do what I can.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's great to have you on the show, dude. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been looking forward to this one. To kick things off, like for people that might not be aware of who you are and such, would you be able to just kind of let us know a bit about who you are, what you do, and various projects you're involved with?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Tom McKay. I am a solo artist by night and YouTuber, podcaster by day. I am part of the YouTube I'm the creator and host of the YouTube channel Metal Robot Reviews and the Metal Robot Podcast, all under the metalrobot.com banner, all of which is done pretty much by me. I don't have any other collaborations I do, although I work a lot with a friend of mine named Colin Sterling of Thrasher's Paradise. But the music side is mostly solo music. I'm a songwriter, I'm a vocalist, guitarist, and I'm also part of a collaborative project called Homoeutious, where I provide vocals for, so far, technically three of the songs, I think. The Rite of Lycaon Part 1 and 2, and also the badass fucking cover of Arabian Nights that we did. That was amazing. And I also help out with the GJ on other projects too, such as Hellspawn Part 2. So I'm kind of all over the place in terms of where I am and where you can find me.
Oh, that's so cool, man. Yeah. You clearly are full of skills, man, across the board, and that's really cool to see. I'm a big fan of the music. I was trying to remember, like, if I first came across your work through Homoeutious, or if I saw it on the podcast, maybe. I'm not sure, but it's all awesome. Just as you mentioned there, I'm curious. What were you doing on the GJ tracks? Contributing some vocals, or?
Yeah. So for Hellspawn Part 2, he asked me to provide a voiceover in the intro for the video. So I'm the guy who's doing like the dark, the Steppenwolf type vocals in the beginning, and I'm also providing the actual growling vocals for the song. He wrote the lyrics. He said, "Here are the lyrics. Here's kind of how I envisioned it going. Have at it." And there I went going, like the freaking growling vocals, bringing demons into the night, that kind of thing.
Nice. Yes, I'm not sure we've actually quite mentioned. We mentioned the Metal Robot, so we've kind of indicated there, but you've given us a little bit taste there of those glossaryals. So let's. You got a bunch of projects. I want to delve into them all, but why don't we start with your solo music? What kind of music would you say that you play, and what's the story with that project in general?
So for my solo work, a lot of it, I don't really know what genre it should be classified under. I know, excuse me, on the Metal Archives, it's classified as like melodic blackened death metal. Or like melodic symphonic blackened death metal, something along those lines. But and I think that's a pretty good way to describe what I do, because a lot of it's inspired by early Opeth, which is blackened death metal, bit of progressive. It is inspired by Epica's and Nightwish's orchestral leanings, and there's a bit of melodic leanings to like some of my earlier influences of artists such as Avenged Sevenfold. Not necessarily with the lead work. God, no, not with the lead work, but with the but with their use of grooves and hooks, like I try to implement some of those into the music where I can, because it's very much not something that would be easily digestible, any of my songs, by most people in the mainstream. Maybe Rain of Fire, but that's aside the point. Most of the time, it's very like niche. So I try to bring in something, always try to bring in something that, hey, this is going to hook you. This is going to bring you into it. And that's something I've always enjoyed with the music I enjoy, is getting something to hook you into it and bring you into it, whether it's the grooves, the riffs, the melodies, the vocals, orchestration, what have you.
Yeah, I got you, man. Yeah, and that comes through. So I suppose overall you'd say it's a kind of like extreme metal project in whatever way you want to break that down. But you're using that kind of songwriting sensibility and stuff, and you have these more melodic, hooky influences as well. So that's cool, man.
Yeah, because I mean, like for me especially, can you tell I'm North American? So for me, a lot of like the music I enjoy has something to hook you melodic wise. I enjoy melody. Even in like some of the most extreme death metal cases, you're going to hear something that's going to hook you, whether it's in the grooves or in especially the melody. That's why when it comes to death metal, melodic death metal is usually the place I like to go, because even without the singing vocals, like the clean vocals, the pop rock vocals, whatever, there's melody there. It's in the guitars. It's in the synths. It's in wherever else you can find it. Melody exists everywhere else aside from vocals, despite some popular belief tends to be.
I got you, man. Yeah, I mean, you use the term hook, right? And I think that's probably actually a more relevant thing, more commonly in music, but definitely in like extreme music. And such, as opposed to necessarily being all about grand melodies in more traditional writing. Hooks can kind of come in all sorts of different ways. So as you say, like in death metal, it could just be a good riff or something like that hooks a particular kind of rhythm or whatever. So yeah, I suppose it's just thinking about these. That's just the craft of songwriting, isn't it? Really, though, to have things that tie songs together.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, like if you can get your listener, regardless of the genre you're listening to be invested in the music, regardless of what style you're making, you're doing something right. And at the end of the day, that's always what I enjoy, is something that gets you invested. If you're boring your listener, that's wrong. Like like don't do that if you possibly can. And so I always enjoy music that can keep you engaged.
So at what point did you officially start the solo project then? And like, because I mean, you're playing like everything pretty much, right? You're doing, I know obviously you've got some great guests and things that make appearances, but you're a multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, etc.
Kind of, sort of. Like I am a singer, I'm a guitarist. Everything else that you've heard is programmed. So the drums are programmed, the bass was even programmed, and obviously the orchestral work is live. It's all programmed. I just have a random orchestra hiding in the closet there. Don't mind them. No, it's all programmed, aside from the guitars and the vocals. And of course, like every once in a while, yes, as mentioned, I'll bring on a guest. So for the latest EP, that was Nathan Gross doing the orchestration for the intro track for the latest EP called The Dæmon Sultan. And for the Benighted one, I brought on Lindsay Schoolcraft to join me for a section of the song. Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, and you're based in like Toronto or that kind of area, right? Like both of those guys. So cool.
Right now, yeah, I'm basically based in like the Burlington, Hamilton area, which is basically around the GTA, the Greater Toronto area, not Grand Theft Auto. It's the nice. I don't know. I cannot be the only one who made that assumption. I live in that area, and for whatever reason, someone said the GTA. They're talking about the Greater Toronto area. I don't know what. I cannot be the only one who thought they meant the game. I cannot be the only one. Someone please validate me.
Oh no, 100%, man. I never heard of the Greater Toronto area in that context. So my mind would go to GTA.
Yeah, it's more of a local term, from what I understand. It's of the actual like Greater Toronto area. So that includes Toronto, of course. That includes like Hamilton, I believe, Burlington, Oakville, like those cities, those cities. Vaughan is another one. Not Vince Vaughn, but Vaughan. Yeah, I'm probably just speaking gibberish at this point to anybody who does not live in that area, but somebody who does, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, you got a lot of great metal musicians in the area by the seams of things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool scene. I keep finding loads of bands from that area.
Oh, especially in the Hamilton scene. Hamilton is a breeding ground for musicians of all walks of life. I mean, from Hamilton, there's big names like Arkells are from Hamilton. There's and this is like outside of metal, of course, but there's Teenage Head, there's Monster Truck. What else? There's also the Dirty Nil, Luthero. If we're going to the metal world, Threat Signal. It is a breeding ground for all types of musicians. Something that I could not get in my own hometown of Burlington. Yes, Burlington has Walk Off the Earth. Everybody knows who Walk Off the Earth. They're the guys who like 5 people on the one giant guitar. That's that Burlington. Yeah, you've got those, but Hamilton's where the music's at. And of course, in Ontario, you've got APOC from Kitchener. You've got this area is a breeding ground for talented musicians, and anyone would be remiss to just overlook it.
Yeah, totally, man. It's totally cool. Like, obviously, cool thing about the internet, right? We get to chat with people all over the world, and it's funny how many times I keep seeming to get pulled back to the east of Canada, meeting so many people there. So yeah, really cool. You've been based in that area your whole life, or?
Whole life, born and raised in Burlington. Once I moved out of my parents' house during the pandemic, by the way, bad idea. And moved out to Hamilton, Stony Creek area, and been around here ever since. Never really moved anywhere else, like out of province, out of the country. I've been here, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I mean, one thing I really like to do on this show is I like to get an idea of people's journeys, especially, musical journey, but, you've got the podcast, the reviews and everything there. So I'd love to get into that stuff. But as we were talking about your music and things, I'm really curious, where your musical journey began. When did you first get into music?
So timelines are a bit interesting for that, for me in general, but for that especially, because officially my journey began as a wee lad in about 2011, I want to say 2011, give or take, where I first discovered a band called 3 Days Grace, and their song Home off of their debut album. And that was I don't know if you have you heard that song? By chance?
I'm
familiar, so in terms of at least rock, that is a heavy fucking song.
Yeah,
lyrics looking back are kind of dumb, but the instrumentation and the vocal presence of Adam Gontier, especially, that song is heavy.
Yeah,
and it's hard to really deny, especially if you're in 2011. I must have been just about to get to high school, I think. So I was 13, 14 years old, and that song, before then, I was more kind of just standard rock kind of world. And so bringing that in was just, oh my God, what the fuck is this? And then from there, it's mostly just 3 Days Grace. But then in 2012, because Call of Duty Black Ops 2 had had Avenged Sevenfold in there. And then immediately I got hooked to the heavy metal world. From there, it just became as most people with ADHD will do, they'll hyper-focus on a specific thing and start going further down the rabbit hole. And so Avenged Sevenfold turned into Trivium, turned into Devil Wears Prada, turned into so on and so forth. Mostly metalcore, but then slowly start bringing my way into the Whitechapel area, the Volbeat area, the so on and so forth. It just went all the way down from there, and starting Metal Robot Reviews, and in 2016, that ended up opening the doors even further. But the reason why I said the timeline's fuzzy is because metal's kind of already been a part of my world when my dad got remarried to my stepmom, who is very much like, she's more of like an 80s hair metal kind of person. So, well, hair metal, like she enjoys metal as well. But her area was like Guns N' Roses, Aerosmith. Do they count? I don't.
Thereabouts.
Kiss. Kiss. She enjoyed Metallica. Like that kind of world. So it was already kind of there. I just never got hooked into that just yet. I think I needed a bit more. Yeah, it probably had to go to my formative years where music would be a lot more interesting to a person at that age, like 13, 14. Around that time, that's when everyone finds their musical identity. And I think around that time, it was the perfect opportunity to find 3 Days Grace and Avenged Sevenfold and go from there. But before then, that's the reason why it's fuzzy. It's because it's always been there, but that around like 2011, at 13, 14 years old, that's when it started to pick up.
I get you. And that's really cool. I think it's what you say about, you said it so well about like finding your musical identity at that age.
Well, I mean, most people do, because like that, I think, I don't know where exactly this like statistic came from, but I think I saw it first from an Adam Neely video where he talked about how around like 13, 14 years old, around those areas of age, everything sounds amazing for whatever reason that is. Yes. Everything just sounds amazing. And that's where your musical identity starts to really shape. And so if you're like 13 years old and you're listening to some like, not like the nasty, gnarly kind of metal yet, then you're going to start getting hooked. And so, and especially if you keep going down that rabbit hole, you're going to find some stuff that you really start to enjoy. You really kind of get I don't know where I was going with that thought, but you start to enjoy a lot.
Yeah, get
more.
A proper connection. I think it's because you can sort of identify with it. I guess it goes from being kind of noise, it's something cool to listen to going to something that you really feel and interpret.
I mean, especially if you're a tween listening to 3 Days Grace, that is probably the best combination possible.
Yeah, it's got because of the angstiness, right? And I think that's a really interesting phrase.
It's not a phase, Mom. Like that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's interesting this thing that you said about being that age and things sounding really good, because I guess it's just like you're very sensitive, I suppose, at this age with all the development and stuff that's going on. Like you're processing a lot of shit in general. I mean, especially like prepubescent or in the middle of puberty kind of teens, like regardless of your gender and gender identity, that is the development age where things are, you're developing, as you said. You're like everything's coming together, everything's connecting. And that's perfect. That's the perfect time for me, at least, that was the perfect time to start getting into everything. Because you're questioning stuff and you're trying to find your own identity and your own sense of meaning in the world. And then you find these, musicians and such artists that create something that's like, yes, this is me, this represents me. Yeah. So that's cool. I guess, that's the thing. Like you can listen to classic rock and metal and it's great, but that's your stepmom's music or your parents' music and whatever. And it's cool. Yeah. But then when you found 3 Days Grace, I suppose, Avenged Sevenfold, this was your music. And I guess that's the difference.
I think so, yeah. And you know what, like even like as I grew up, like I learned to love those artists a lot more as well. And like I remember even even then, it's like as a kid, I remember like I liked Skid Row. That was a good one. But apart from that, like most of my stuff at that age, I'm not gonna lie, it was mostly just like kind of like a bit of rap. Surprisingly, which I don't really look back. Yeah, but also like what my dad brought me up on. So Bon Jovi and the Beach Boys, stuff like that. Yeah, so that stuff like that is like what I was brought up on. And that in many ways kind of kept me towards the rock side more than anything else. Like, rap was there. Like I was into Eminem, that kind of stuff. But really that was more like, hey, this is kind of cool to listen to. It's got some energy to it, and Eminem especially. Holy shit! Like you'd be surprised how heavy the guy gets sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of, I'm starting to see a pattern in that, but it all like transitioned to metal once I found in that time period is when things start to shift.
And it's really cool as well that Avenged Sevenfold was such a gateway band for you coming through Call of Duty. I was a huge Avenged Sevenfold fan as well. It was a massive gateway band for me too. But I was actually already into it. Was City of Evil that came out, and I saw the music videos and stuff, and I was really into them. So it was a bit before they did the Call of Duty stuff, which I loved that they did that. And I saw how that exploded things and how that obviously introduced so many new people. And so the fact that you were in that wave is really cool because that's something quite unique, I think. And this crossover of video games and metal, like, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, metal and video games, they've been collaborating for years. I mean, like even if we're talking about bands that many don't really classify as metal, but definitely have a harder edge to them. So like anybody who like come into mind, Breaking Benjamin working for Halo 2. And their song "Blow Me Away," that like stuff like that. Rock and metal.
Steve Vai was on Halo 2 as well, I think, right?
Yeah. So like rock and metal have always had a place in video games, and that's something that I thoroughly enjoy. The Doom soundtrack is amazing. Is an amazing example.
Totally.
Yeah, because whether people like to admit it or not, like anybody, it's like metal's not real music. Really? Why are you jamming to the Doom soundtrack then? Shut the fuck. Yeah, you know, like totally. So like metal and rock have always had a place in video games because it's such a diverse genre of like 20 gajillion subgenres that all have their own identities and their own emotional feelings to them. And it's so diverse, you can have metal for really anything, especially in aggressive moments where you want that aggression for, say, like a shooter game or an RTS. And yeah, metal's always had a place. And I think many game developers, including the guys behind Call of Duty, recognize that. And seeing this band, Avenged Sevenfold, coming up, and they're already gaining some popularity as it is with City of Evil, of course, on MTV, and the self-titled as well blowing up. Like they were already like they were pretty popular, and so I'm guessing the guys, I think it was Treyarch who did Black Ops 2. Yeah, Treyarch. And they were like, yeah, bring in Avenged Sevenfold. We like collaborating with these guys, and they'd be perfect for this song "Carry On" for the ending, and also for maybe a couple Zombies tracks. Who knows? Yeah.
Was it "Carry On" that one? I remember. I think the first one they did was a Zombies one, right? Like "Not Ready to Die" was it? I think
"Not Ready to Die" came out for the Call of the Dead DLC, but my exposure to Avenged Sevenfold was from "Carry On" because
that's the end of the campaign.
Once you complete the campaign, it's such. Which, by the way, if you haven't played Call of Duty Black Ops 2 before, play it and then wait until the end. You get the two characters, Woods and Menendez, and their interactions are so funny because it's so off base from the campaign. It's fucking hilarious, and what they did with it, it's amazing.
But they actually brought the band in, like as like not NPCs, but they were kind of in the cinematic, right? Like they got them in mocap and everything, and then you get the 3D model, as good of a 3D model as you can get in 2012. It was so fucking amazing. And from that point on, once I saw that, it was like, it's game over, man. I'm in. Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, they went and did even like Avenged Sevenfold collaborated with Call of Duty a lot in the end. Like, as I remember, then Shepherd of Fire was on another Black Ops game or Call of Duty game. Which was awesome.
It was. I mean, this was around the time. I don't think it was intended for, because I know which one I talk about. It's for the Origins DLC for Zombies. But I don't think it was intended for that. I think that's just because, if I remember correctly, around that same time, they were in the middle of promotion for the Hail to the King album. So I think that song had already kind of popped off, had already been known, and and Call of Duty was like, hey, let's get an edited version for this intro cinematic for this Origins map. And hey, you know what? regardless of whether it was for it or not, it fucking worked.
Yeah, it totally worked. I thought that one was really badass, actually. Yeah, the way that it's building it.
Yeah.
And,
Like, I mean, I have my thoughts on the Hail to the King album, including even that song, because of the sheer resemblance to the Metallica's Black Album and everything else that was involved. But you know what? Like, at the end of the day,
it was like a sellout album, quote unquote, right?
Yeah, that's some people's thoughts. My thoughts more were just like, it's like a huge departure, dumbed down, simplified, and a straight up copy. But at the same time, like, if that's really, at the time at least, their worst Avenged Sevenfold album, they're fine. Like, it's still a great album. It's not their best, and there's a lot of problems with it, in my opinion, but it's still, like, if this is their worst, they're fucking gold standard. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, oh man, 100%. The thing that I love about Avenged Sevenfold is they have just changed it up a load over these different records, and that therefore it can divide the fan base and have different, they're not just making the same thing every time. And if that was like a sort of very like copy commercial record or whatever, which is a valid criticism. I mean, I think it was their most commercially successful, so there's that.
Big time.
But like obviously what they've done since is like so far from that. It's like the most fun commercial thing ever, so totally avant-garde.
You want to talk jumping the shark? Well, holy shit, that last album.
The last album was crazy. It's just come out recently, obviously. We're recording this, but
yeah, I know a lot of people are not on board with that one, and even as Avenged Sevenfold devotee, I don't blame them.
Oh man, I can completely understand. Yeah.
Like because even for me, like I love me some fucking prog. The Stage is still one of my favorite albums.
Is fantastic. Yeah,
it's obviously I don't think it's one of their best albums, but it's definitely one of my top three at least.
Yeah.
That being said, I understand why people didn't like that one. And now with this last one, I think I talked about this when I reviewed it on the podcast, but this is like if what was telling people that they were hearing from the Stage exemplified for everybody else who didn't get it.
So man, literally, because that was so you had the Hail to the King super commercial, and then the Stage where they at that time went super weird. They're like, okay, now we're gonna go off our major label and we're gonna go like totally off and be like prog and do our own thing. Yeah, and that was like, I hadn't listened to Avenged Sevenfold for a while at that point, and so at first I was like, okay, that's interesting, but that album grew on me a lot, and I've come to really like it, as you say. But as you say, anything that was weird about that album got dialed up to 100 on the next one.
I think in comparison, the Stage is like mainstream. That is like radio rock in comparison to what we got recently. Because I don't know, like maybe it's just because I'm not as big of a prog guy as I thought I was, but that was just hard to digest. I've been trying to really, I've been trying to listen to it back and forth even since the review, and I'm like, I get what they're trying to do, but I feel like I'm missing a lot here of what I'm supposed to enjoy.
I think the thing with this one is like there's prog, but then this is really sort of avant-garde, almost like taking a modern art kind of approach at points. It's almost like Frank Zappa-esque as well at times, I would say.
Frank Zappa, Pink Floyd, kind of. I'm seeing a bit of Pink Floyd in there as well, with some of just the way it's constructed, which in many ways I kind of respect, right? But doesn't make it easier to digest, even for most prog fans.
I would honestly say overall that I liked it. Like I would definitely go in the positive camp. It's just, as you say, very hard to digest. There was definitely many times where I was just like shocked. I was like, I cannot believe it just did that. Like, what just happened?
Yeah, like it's like even despite my lower score that I would hope to give to an Avenged Sevenfold, it's like 12 out of 15. I gave it. I think 12 and a half, maybe. It's like it's still a good album. Like for me, the performances are top notch. Yeah. It was more the songwriting that was kind of throwing me off, and it's good songwriting, but it's like it felt Frankenstein, as you mentioned.
Totally, totally.
Like I think one analogy I gave to my buddy Colin. I think I said it on his radio show too. It was like, it's like if five is like you have all five great musicians, but the leader of the pack is on LSD, crack, ADHD meds, Adderall, and is just going everywhere at once, bouncing off the fucking walls, and everyone's following the leader.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what is happening. I don't know, man. Everyone writing this album is just on a shit ton of Adderall, and no one told them to stop. Yeah, man. Yeah, well, they were making a lot of edgy comments for a long time about how like Kanye West was such a massive influence for the album and things like that.
This was before the anti-Semitism rose too. That was yeah. I remember some people were not on board with that, and they're like, "The fuck do you mean?"
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Like it's a weird fucking album, and I'll be honest, I don't even listening to it. Where was the Kanye West influence?
I guess maybe in some of the trap beats and stuff. I don't know, and definitely in perhaps the general erratic nature of it. I don't know.
Probably, yeah. I would assume so.
Yeah, it's more of a philosophical outlook influence.
Yeah,
but okay, all right. We don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but I do have to quickly. I have to quickly know, like, which is your top Avenged album then, or your favorites, your favorites and your least favorites.
Oh man, so I think we've already discussed my least favorite.
Cool.
Like which somehow became like Hail to the King. I'm sorry, but like my top favorites, I have to say, like it's Nightmare, City of Evil, and The Stage in one spot. Maybe the City of Evil is probably above Nightmare, and The Stage is kind of below. Like those are my top three.
Yeah.
Like City of Evil, fucking City of Evil, of course. That's like their proto-prog era. Nightmare had like delved further into that prog realm while also still finding a way to be digestible. It was amazing, and the diverse sounds really helped to stand out. And The Stage, of course, it's The Stage. They're really committing to the prog act, and it worked.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, those are my top three. Everything else kind of falls in between there. Though I got to say, like Wake in the Fallen is like at least number 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wake in the Fallen is awesome. Yeah, man. I was such a huge fan of them back in the day. Like I played Waking the Fallen a load, even sounding the 7 trumpet I had on CD and would listen to that a load. You know, I haven't listened to it in many years since, but yeah, definitely City of Evil, man. And I remember like watching their videos they were posting on MySpace for the self-titled album as that was coming out, and I went and bought it the day that it came out on CD. I was like 11 or something. But yeah, I was such a big fan, man. But I think it was just seeing their music videos on TV, and I loved Sinister Gates' guitar. I just thought that was like the coolest guitar ever when I saw it. I think it was even the guitar first. I saw it in a store, and it was like my favorite guitar that I saw there, and I played it and stuff. And then I saw the music video, like, oh, that's that guitar, and I was like, this is epic.
That's the guitar. I recognize that.
But it was a huge thing for like young guitarists and things like that. They were the band, you know. And I think that's what made them like they're so influential to a particular wave of us, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, like growing up, people had Metallica, they had Slash. Now, like then in the 2000s, Sinister Gates.
Yeah, totally.
Like it's amazing to watch that.
The new metal era kind of really got rid of the guitar hero, right? Even grunge as well. Like from 90s to 2000s, we were losing the guitar hero era. So yeah, Sinister Gates, he definitely really was an icon for that, I would say.
He brought it back.
Yeah.
The motherfucker brought it back. Amazing.
So when did you start playing guitar then? Or like playing music yourself?
So I didn't really get into like music creation until about high school, I think. So that was around the time of like, grade 12 was my senior year because I needed at least one more elective course to take for that semester. And given that my brother grew up with guitar, he was playing guitar for years, I'm like, yeah, why not give it a shot? Let me pick this up. And I spent most of it kind of noodling around and learning, of course, how to play it with the basic stuff that I had to learn, but mostly just kind of dicking around with it, learning like some of my favorite songs that I liked and learning how to play them and learning what to do with the chord structures and learning what like the noodling riffs and stuff like that. It was all on nylon acoustic too, which is not as good sounding as you can imagine on riff. Nice. Try playing Pantera on a nylon string. It's
drop D nylon.
Yeah, but I didn't really start taking it super seriously until I think actually after then, because I still had the guitars and I still like kind of had them, but I never really took it seriously. I think if you're somehow able to find some of my earliest videos, there was a bit I did on for Metal Robot. There's a bit I did where like I was just mocking a guitar intro, which was just one note. Mm-hmm. And I just did that by staring blankly at the camera and playing that low one note as blankly as possible. I don't know why it looks like I'm jerking off right now. Anyways, but I looking back, if you watch that video, you'll realize that guitar's out of tune, isn't it? That guitar's way out of tune. It has not been touched in a while. And so like stuff like that is like how it was, but I didn't really start taking it seriously until I was doing like kind of songwriting stuff still, like I was writing stuff, but never really playing it a lot until like maybe I started taking it seriously where I was like, okay, I want to have original music for the show to not worry about copyright issues. Because I think my original theme song was an Avenged Sevenfold song, of course, off of City of Evil. But I was like, if that gets caught, I'm going to be fucked. So I needed original music. So I needed to learn, I need to learn to play again. I need to get back into it. So I need to learn what I need to do and to record and stuff like that. And so like from there, I don't remember when exactly that was, but a couple of years later is when I was able to finally get Rain of Fire written, at least like the main riff, and then go from there and turning it into a full song. Again, timelines are fuzzy for that, but that's kind of where it went.
Mm-hmm. And so you got into recording on a DAW on your laptop or whatever?
On my laptop with a DAW I had, I was still working with Adobe Audition at the time for recording music. I didn't actually get into getting a proper DAW for music until later on. This would have been like during college. So probably between 2017, 2019 is when I started working with that. And from there, it's like, I think eventually I did end up getting Studio One, and that's where I started recording music from. Don't remember when exactly that was, but it was some time in the past.
Yeah, I assume so. Nice, but that's cool. So you started with the reviews channel first, really, and like so.
Well, that wasn't my first YouTube channel though. Like I've been on YouTube for technically years, like since I was a kid. But I kind of experimented with different channels. The last failed experiment, I'll say, was a gaming channel called LBP 101, which was like based off of the game Little Big Planet, which I was really into at the time, and that kind of failed because at some point I could not get it to be interesting anymore. It became treating video games like a job. And anybody who enjoys video games knows you don't want this to be treated like a job. Jobs are boring. You want it to be fun and interesting. And I couldn't get it to that point because every time I turned on the console, it's like I felt an obligation to record something. It doesn't matter what it was. It was anything. It was no longer a leisure time to keep me engaged. And so that was
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually I did end up getting into reviews because I was getting into YouTube channels like the Rock Critic, who is now Crash Thompson, also Rocked, which is rock.net with Luke. And at the time, the Nostalgia Critic was also something I was watching as well. And those three combined ended up getting me to be like, hey, I could do that with metal. That could be fun.
Yeah, cool.
Lo and behold.
Yeah, right on, man. So metal reviews, you started that up You said 2016 or something like that. And
yeah, mid 2016.
Mm-hmm. And so for people that haven't seen what you do there, like what would you describe as the content that you make?
Pure nonsense. It's like I try to be as informative as I can with making sure that I'm giving actual opinions of what I'm listening to and what I'm talking about. But it's basically a show of jokes. Like I make a shit ton of jokes. It's come to the point now where the rating doesn't really mean anything. Like it's like people have always like questioned, why is it out of 15? Why not 10 or 5? I remember it. I did that because I wanted to be original, but at some point I just kind of ran with the absurdity of doing out of 15. And at some point it's like, what was it? What album did I officially like make that officially known to people? Which was Chopping Mall, I think it was. Because I gave that like at the end of it, I gave it like a 15 out of 15 just because the album itself was so fucking absurd and I wanted to end on an absurd note. I think I even said like 15 out of 15. That's not the real score. I just wanted to give that so I can say 15 something, something, something. It became a joke basically. And that's kind of the whole shtick of the reviews was it's all jokes. It's all fun and games.
Nice.
And that was a lot of, and it's a lot of fun to do. I enjoy making jokes and entertaining people, but also talking about music. You can tell as we've been going on for God, how long now? We've been talking about Avenged Sevenfold. I love talking about music. I love talking about music.
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, so that's cool. So I guess that keeps that thing going, as you say, with in terms of keeping a passion going for something. Because I think it's so interesting what you said there about how playing a game turned into a job or whatever, that kind of spoiled it in that instance. And I remember having one person in particular, John Heckathorn, he said on this podcast, he actually said the same thing about music. He was like, the last thing I want to do is like have music as a job, basically, you know, like for me, music is like the opposite of a job. So I wouldn't want to make it a job, you know? So It was interesting they said that. But for you, I guess you found a happy medium with doing reviews and stuff because
it was also the mindset going in. It was also the mindset going in because I think with the gaming channel, anybody who starts with a gaming channel, they have maybe a sort of expectation of where they want to go with it. Because the gaming scene at the time, especially, was popping off. It was like PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and so many people getting into that were like, I want that, and that's. I think at the time I had a similar mindset. I didn't know what I wanted with the YouTube channel, but I saw a little bit of a like popping off, especially as I transitioned from just focusing on one game to several. And that did not end up happening. I think last time I checked, that channel only had like just over 500 subscribers, which is like, it's not bad. Like it's not bad as I'm looking back now. But I remember at the time it's like, but it's not 5 million.
Yeah.
It's not 50 million. Why? It's not PewDiePie. So I think at the time is like, especially as I was starting to treat it, try to take it seriously. It's like at that point, as mentioned, like I think when you were talking about didn't want music to become a job, is like I get that because you don't want this fun thing to feel like an obligation, like you have to do it. It's something you should want to do. And with video games, I want to play video games, but I didn't want to have to play video games for videos for YouTube. And that kind of fell off, and that became a huge problem. And looking back, a lot of it also probably could have just been like, I didn't know a lot about what's going on up here with my ADHD that I didn't know I had. And so like working with that was something I didn't even really account for. And it could be that, but also like it was probably the fact that I didn't want to be obligated to play video games when I knew I just wanted to relax. I just wanted to play video games, please.
I got you, man. But reviews, you know, you managed to find something that you could find, you know, continuous momentum with.
Well, it was also again, it's something that I do enjoy talking about. I enjoy talking about music, but also I went into it with a better mindset. I didn't go into it with a mindset of, I'm gonna beat PewDiePie. I went into this with the mindset of, I know this is not gonna pop off. I am not going to make millions of dollars off of this. I'm not going to be super successful. It's going to be fun. It's just a talking show. It's maybe we'll get to a point where we're in the thousands of subscribers, but I'm not going to hold out hope for that. I'm just going to enjoy it while I have it and see where it goes. And so far, it's been going pretty well. I think last I checked, we're just shy of 500. Maybe we've actually passed it by now. Probably. Let me double check. But last I checked, it was like 499 subscribers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was like
go
really
subscribe.
Go subscribe, get me over. Hey, it just hit 500.
Oh, woohoo! Nice, congrats, man. That's awesome.
Hell yeah! But yeah, so like that's the thing is like I knew it was not going to like pop off as fast as possible. Again, I've been doing this since 2016. It's 2023 now. We're going to be coming up on the 7-year anniversary. We've passed the 7-year anniversary by now. So like the fact it's only at 500, that's okay with me because I knew it was not going to pop off as fast as I wanted it to. And it is what it is, but I enjoy doing it anyways. And having the right mindset is also important there. It's like, you can take it as seriously as you want, but understand regardless of what your goals are, understand where you realistically know it's going to go. And I knew realistically based on the fact that this is a niche genre of not only music review, but metal music review. I knew it wasn't going to pop off as fast as possible. So having that mindset, it really did help with keeping up with wanting to continue to do it.
Totally. Yeah. I think there's a really good lesson in that. And it's definitely that thing about enjoying the process, right? You know, and as you say, obviously it's very easy to fall into the more naive trap of, as you say, as you're younger, I'm sure many people have had some similar experience where you're like, oh yeah, just do that and be the next PewDiePie or something like that. So
everybody wanted to be the next PewDiePie. And I remember so many people were saying like, how do I, like, it's like, we're asking their favorite YouTubers like Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, et cetera, et cetera. They would ask them like, how do I do what you do? And they're like, don't do what I do. Do your own thing. You can be a gaming channel, but you don't need to be the next me. Be the next you. And that's something, and that is, I know, so inspirational, right? Freaking have that on a poster with a dolphin and everything. Like, you know, I'm talking about those motivational posters with like the unrelated dolphin picture. It's great. Stuff like that. Like it's, so like, then, and that makes total sense. Like, because people aren't going to be looking for the next Markiplier or the next PewDiePie. They're looking for like something that is like interesting and new. They don't go to another YouTube channel because they're PewDiePie-esque. They check them out because this is a new person. I really like what they're doing. I like who they are. I like how they interact with their audience. I like their personality. That is more important than PewDiePie 2.
Yeah.
It's like no one cares. I've got PewDiePie 1. No one needs the light version. Come on.
I think that you've made like the best point, which is absolutely the bulk of it. But I think there's also this other component perhaps in regards to the expectations, which a lot of people might look at that from the outset and be like, oh yeah, he gets paid loads of money and is super famous for playing video games. That's what I want. And it's like, well, yeah, sure. You know, that sounds great, right? But for somebody to get to that point where you're that successful, really, you're not just like somebody that's hanging out playing video games. You're an entrepreneur at that point, right? So I mean, there is work involved, as you said, man. Like you can't. It's not just getting to play whatever video game you want and chill. Basically, like. You have to.
I mean, like even towards the end of the gaming channel, once it started fizzling out, like I was still trying more than just playing video games. I was playing video games, but I remember this one of my last videos was playing Call of Duty World War, I think it was called. I don't remember. It was one of the more recent Call of Duty games at the time. And I turned that into like, hey, like we're gonna try a challenge here, get this thing, but I'm going to, every time I fail, I'm going to chug a bottle of Mountain Dew and Doritos because memes, and hope to God that works. Like it became more than just a game. It became also like the comedy of it, and that was fun. But that didn't end up popping off too much past that point. And it just I was around the time I was still getting bored. I was trying to find a way to get it interesting. But stuff like that, like that's an example of like, hey, I suck at this game, but you're not really here because I suck at this game. You're here because of the sheer hilarity of watching me try so fucking hard and fail in the end. And watching like how I deal with this problem. And it becomes like a joke at that point. That's where the comedy comes from. That's where the video really starts to kind of have a bit of fun. And that's what PewDiePie does. Not exactly that, but PewDiePie and Markiplier, they play the game, but you're not there for the game specifically. You're there to watch their reactions and how they interact with the game. That is 10 times more important.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's this is the personality. I mean, you say about reactions and stuff as well. You like obviously reviews and things like reaction channels have just exploded the last few years, and I think that's interesting.
For better or worse. For better or worse.
For better or for worse. Yeah, absolutely. Like I swear most people seem to not like them, but people are watching them, right?
Well, that's true, but also not true. A lot of people don't like the Sniper Wolf XQC variety of reaction channels where you heard about this recently, right? Like that's like the whole thing's popping off. I'm still subscribed to Jack's Films for this whole fucking drama. I'm here for it.
Nice.
But like it's like reaction channels like that nobody likes because that's not reaction. That's just freebooting. But reaction channels like say for example like opera singer reacts to metal music video or drum teacher reacts to drum solo, like expert reacts videos. Those are something I think a lot of people do enjoy simply because not only is it like, it's a reaction video, sure, but there's something else to it. You're not just there to watch someone else watching this thing you've probably seen already or want to see soon. You're there because these people have something to say about it. They have something to add that is something you may not have known before. And it adds something to it. They're not just watching blankly at the video. That was funny. Like they're actually adding something to it in between. Like they're stopping the video. Like I find that interesting what he's doing with his vocal cords there. Like I really want to see what he's doing. Like you can like it's very analytical mindset of like this is what he's doing, and I find it fascinating that he's doing it like that, or she is doing it like that, or they are doing 2023. They are like it's like you get into that. You watch the video for the reactor, not the actual like thing they're reacting to.
Yes,
and stuff like that. Stuff like that I like, and stuff like that is something that I have tried to do, and probably will continue to try to do at some point once I actually get back into it. But that's those types of reaction videos. People don't mind those because they're actually transformative. They're fair use. Again, it's the Sniper Wolf variety people don't like.
Yeah, sure. I guess if it's inauthentic, that people don't like that. I suppose what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense because there's like an educational value, or as you said, transformative as a key word, I suppose.
Oh, transformative is very important when it comes to fair use. It's the reason why so many people have talked about fair use before, and that is that you've got to have that if you're going to be using someone else's stuff. Like for my YouTube channel, fair use is fair use or fair dealing if you're in Canada or the UK. It is like that is the primary source of why I'm able to have a YouTube channel in this niche, because I'm not just playing someone else's music. I'm reviewing it. I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
You're not there to necessarily listen to the album in full. No, you're there because you want to see what this blonde dickhead thinks about this album. And stuff like that is why I'm allowed to do that. And stuff like, again, the expert reacts is like, you're not there for the thing they're reacting to. You're there for them. And so that's super important to keep in mind, is that fair use and fair dealing, they are super important when you're using someone else's content for your own content.
Yeah.
And you're not just re-uploading it in its entirety for everybody else to just, hey, let's watch this. No stops, nothing of that sort. Watch this random person just kind of stare blankly at the screen for the next 30 minutes or so, and then never check out the original video. That's what a lot of people don't like.
Yeah.
And because that's not fair use. That's just, you're taking someone else's content, putting it right at the bottom of the screen, and you're just standing there taking up the majority of it, watching it blankly with a dumbass face go, that funny. That's not adding anything.
Yeah,
you're just standing there.
Yeah.
No. Like, what exactly are you adding? The most memeable face on the planet? That's not transformative. That's just dumb.
Yeah, I get you. But the thing is, I suppose there's like the expert adding value and such, but then there's also just people that just review. You know, like a lot of people are not necessarily experts in any regard, or will consider themselves experts. You know, they're just a guy, and I think that brings in, you know, that kind of content creator thing is that, I don't know, it's almost like a mini influencer type of situation, isn't it? But I think it's that we're gravitating towards almost like the virtual living room kind of vibe, right? Like if you you just find a person that you like, a reviewer, right? Somebody that listens to music and is going to give their thoughts on it. And the experience almost feels as if like I'm sitting in the room with my friend, we're playing this tune, I get to hear their thoughts on it. And there seems to really be an audience for that. You know, people want that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, and this is something I found interesting about it. They want, like, the audience, regardless of the laws, they also do go to those reaction videos for that reason. And so you'll find, if you look at the analytics and the retention time on YouTube for those reaction videos, you'll find people are skipping a lot of their pausing and talking. And they're going back to when it's actually there because they want to see their reactions, which is like, okay, that's kind of counterproductive. Like, that's that kind of means, like, because I've seen it on my own too, where reaction content, like, I'll pause it and give like actual reactions, and I won't even play the full thing I'm reacting to. Like, if any of my reaction videos anyone's seen, you'll see like the music video is actually cut in certain places because I'm keeping the reaction highlights, not the full thing. And people don't really end up gravitating to, like, audience members don't gravitate towards that too much. They'll watch for the music video part, but I've noticed in my retention, it drops off after that because the music video is done. And I think I've seen a lot of other channels do that too. So in many ways, I do see the guy in the living room vibe that you're talking about. Maybe I kind of dragged us off the rails for a little bit there, but that's I do understand that. And that's something that I know a lot of audience members like. It does become counterproductive for fair use purposes, but it's still like, it's something that is very important at that point, like to understand. It's like, that's what the audience wants. And as a content creator, you want to give them that, but you also have to find a way to work within the realms of the current copyright laws.
Of course, yeah. No, of course. I know. I think, as you say, I think you have to give thoughts on it. You have to review it. Or whatever. At least just, give your opinions, analysis. Even if it's not expert or whatever, right? Like, as you say, if you're not adding to it,
you've got to add something. That's silly / potentially illegal. But I think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting psychologically, I guess, the kind of content that people like to consume and etc. Anyway. They want to be able to watch their favorite videos with a pseudo friend, which makes sense.
Exactly.
Everybody, we're social creatures. So, like, watching these reaction videos, yes, even the ones that aren't transformative, you're watching with a friend. You're watching this with a friend. They're not, they may not be adding anything, but it's with a friend. You don't expect them to add anything. It's a friend.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, they might, you just get to know what they think or whatever. Did they like it? Did they, whatever? What's their opinion? Because that's always been the thing, in person or whatever. Like, especially when you're like young, you might have like an older friend or something like that. What a cool friend. What do they think about it? And that seems to be what drives a lot of that. So,
oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. But so for you yourself, at what point did it evolve into like doing the podcast and stuff? I guess just started getting more people on the show.
pandemic. Like I still like I do plan on putting out more YouTube videos. I actually have one in the works right now that I filmed 2 years ago. That I'm finally actually finishing up. It's just been a long edit. But the podcasting came up. This was around the time that I started up in radio officially. Like I got my first job in radio as a technical producer for the local radio station here, which if anybody's curious is 900 CHML. Look it up. It's great. Nice. If you're into political talk radio, it's good. People there, amazing. But I started my job there and pandemic hit shortly after. And I was of the mindset at the time, especially of, hey, if you're in the pandemic, yes, it sucks, but you have free time now. You're at home, use it to do something. And so I was like, well, I wanted to do the podcast thing for a while. I see some of my colleagues are in podcasting at not just a radio station, but also like in like the music scene with PR and even music reviewers. Like, let me get into this. And so I started up my podcast and I was like, this is the podcast. This is what we're going from there. And it had a couple different incarnations of it. And especially in 2022 is when like it became what it is now, which was like a full-blown like segmented show beyond just like what it was before, which is mostly just interviews. And it's still like, yeah, the podcast kind of started as a sort of like, I need to do something, let me do something, and thus podcast away.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool. And I absolutely love the style of the podcast you have, because as you say, you do incorporate interviews and things pretty much just like this, like conversations and stuff, which is really cool. You're a great host like that, but you're also cutting in all sorts of other stuff. You're cutting in reviews. You're cutting in, I mean, certainly one of the most unique things about it are all the radio elements, right? Like it sounds like a radio show, and it has a lot of, maybe even old school radio vibes at times, which is so fun, man. Like, and obviously even people can hear just from this show that we're doing right now, like you have a lot of voices and things that you can do that just makes it very kind of animated, I suppose. Yeah, I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of that again is from my radio background. In that, especially like the recent incarnation of the show, I'll admit a lot of it is kind of like the style, not the style, but like the format is kind of ripped from a radio show I was working on at the time. Which was like, well, it wasn't my show, but it was like I was the producer for a show called Raceline, which is a racing radio show that still takes place on that station on the weekends, but the format of like, here's an intro, we're going to get into a longer segment here of something, which in my case turned up reviews, do a short interview segment, maybe part 1 or 2 or the full thing, go into another one, which became the news for the previous season, and then another interview, and then we're done. Let's come up next week. And that format, it kind of just wrote itself at that point. It's like, I wanted to do something new. I want to get back into podcasting because it's been a minute since I did it proper. So what do I do here? Well, let's rejuvenate it. Let's turn it into a full show. And that's what I wanted to do with Metal Robot for a long time. And so the podcast was a good breeding ground for that. I didn't have to worry about the video portion, just worry about the audio. The audio was first and foremost more important.
Yeah, I got you, man. That's really cool because, as I say, it just makes for something much more unique. I don't think I heard any other show that has it going on. And I mean, even if somebody did, you've got so much of your own character in there.
Because most podcasts are like, and this is not a shade against podcasts, because that's still something that that's good to listen to. It's still a good, like something like this, where it's like there's an intro ID, there's an extra, but it's like the core of it is a discussion, and that's amazing to have, and that's a quintessential podcast. For me, I wanted to do something a bit different, which was like, I know I'm not going to always have someone to discuss stuff with at the same time as me. I'll have interviews, but I wanted to do something that I could work with it, where it's not just me talking blankly about my day to a microphone. And that's something that was like, I want to do something different with this. It's just me. What do I do? Well, I've got all these skills I can implement. Let's do that. And so it became something that it was. I mean, if if I had the ability to do so, and I'm looking into abilities to do so right now with something else, if it was just me and another person, I would love to be able to have like a full-blown discussion kind of podcast where it's like two people, it's not really segmented in any way, but two people talking about something. Like it's a group podcast talking about people or like talking with people about whatever. And that's the quintessential podcast, of course. In my case, I didn't have that. So I was like, let's do it like this.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, well, dude, it works. It works so well, man. Well, the only thing that I can only help but think, and it may or may not be correct, but it must be a lot of work the way that you do it. Because yeah, man, like, you know,
brain cells be damned.
Like I do like very minimal editing, especially compared to what you do, man. Like it's nothing in comparison, but it still takes ages because it still just takes a long time even just to bounce out a long video, you know, let alone all the editing and stuff that you do, man. Like,
yeah, like I try to find ways to do it faster. Like, so I'll have like templates set up in for videos, for Premiere, for the podcast. I have a podcast template in Audition, but even those, like, it still requires me to go in and edit the audio, edit out any flubs I did in the segments where I didn't want flubs, to edit down the audio for the interviews, get rid of anything that says like didn't need to be there, kind of tighten it up a bit. Like it requires still a bit of editing, and quite a bit of editing, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And that takes time, but I'm constantly finding ways to make that easier to work with and easier for me to be able to do where it doesn't take up too much of my time. Because at the end of the day, time, no matter how much some of us want to avoid thinking about this, is a limited resource.
For sure.
Forget in the form of a lifetime, which is morbid. In terms of a day, like if you need a full 8 hours sleep, Tom, I'm looking at you. Like future Tom watching this, I'm looking at you. Sleep is important, but in between then, like how much time do you actually have to work? And like you're up for this amount of time, but you need to be able to use that for eating. Yeah.
Life.
So you need to for life. Yeah. So like how much time do you really have? And so the podcast, like podcast and video, they take a lot of time. And that is in many ways a problem, but I'm finding ways constantly to find a way to, okay, how can I speed up my workflow? What can I do to make this go by faster? And in many ways, and this may sound like a bad thing at first, but like what corners can I cut where it'll without sacrificing the quality? Yeah, and that's something that's something that needs to be considered. Everybody especially on YouTube, will think about that if they're doing like heavily edited stuff. Take, for example, there's an animation channel that I really enjoy, which was Let Me Explain Studios with Rebecca Parham. Like one of her Q&A videos, she talked about why her animated characters don't have mouths, which was like, it was a design choice, but also she mentioned like, it's because animation is so hard to really get going on YouTube with the current algorithm setup. She had to find a way to cut corners in places where it didn't really matter as much so that she can please the algorithm and still put out a quality video in the process. And that's kind of what I try to do with the podcast and with the videos. Failing miserably a lot of the time, but I do what I can.
I get you, man. Yeah, that's interesting. It's like, it's a stylistic choice based on the circumstances.
Yeah. And as long as you can find, because that's the thing, like when I say cut corners, I don't mean in the same way as like for like a lot of controversies tend to come from big organizations. It's more like as an individual who's doing this on his own, pro bono, with no, like, this is not something I'm getting paid to do. I got to find a way to be able to cut corners in places that doesn't really matter, which is kind of hard for a perfectionist to do, but you gotta find those places. And a lot of the time, especially in the podcast, I'm cutting back on, okay, so the corner I can cut here, I don't need to tighten up the interviews as much as needed. I don't need to script out the reviews and stuff like that as much as I was doing. And I don't need to read them word for word. Like I can cut the corners by having bullet points of my script of sorts and being like, okay, go through that and you can improvise as you go. Because like, because I'm capable of doing that. I'm in radio and I know I can improvise on the spot. It's not that big of a deal. And having these bullet points helps me guide me the way down. And so cutting corners in those places, it doesn't sacrifice the quality so much. It gets something out there that's still entertaining. Yeah. And you're still getting your personality. It's just now less scripted than it was before.
Yeah, which may end up improving it anyway. But I totally get you, especially things like, scripting and stuff, because then you're like writing an essay every video basically, and then starting to make the video. So if you can get it down. And I think, not to go back to that whole thing, but like I think it's relevant that that's perhaps a big reason why there is so much reaction content now, because so many YouTubers and stuff were like, wait, you want this? You're gonna actually get more views on this than the one that I spend forever on? Okay, cool. I could just set up the camera and like go 10 minutes, the video's done. Like, sweet.
Yeah, in many ways it's easier to do it like that. And that's the reason why I kind of started to, for podcasting at least, ditch the script format. Like I still have the same like clock, I guess, in terms of, if you're looking at radio terms, the same format of the show, but it's not as scripted anymore. It needed to be no longer scripted because otherwise I'd be, like you said, writing basically essays every single podcast. And that's what I was doing. Yeah. But when we're looking at, for reaction content, that's way easier. You don't need a script. You just need, what am I reacting to?
Yeah.
And you just got to be able to improvise on the spot and be able to just bring forth your personality and bring forth your expertise or your opinions or whatever you have to the table to be able to make something interesting. And that's in many ways way easier than scripting out a full video.
I got you, man. I got you. So your career in radio, man, like I'd love to get a little bit more of an idea of what you do in radio.
So my position is I'm in technical production. So my job, the other name for it is board operator, which I am not a big fan of that name, but so that's why I usually call it technical producer, because what my job is for a radio show, I'm not the host. I sometimes might join the host on the air, but my job first and foremost is making sure that the buttons on the board are set up, the levels and buttons and stuff like that. I'm basically in front of a mixing board. And my job is to get the host on the air and make sure that the music's playing, any sound effects needed are playing, commercials are playing as well for the station, making sure we're timed out to the hour, because that's a very important thing we have to do, and making sure we have the guests on, putting them up. Like, it's a very intense job in the middle of a show, but it's a very important job. If you listen to a radio show and you hear the host, but you also hear sound effects, you hear music, that's my job. Yeah,
cool, man. Yeah, I'd imagine that's got to be intense because you got to be very focused like the entire time the show's on, pretty much, right?
It's mostly just like, I've come to the point now, because I've been doing this for years now. Like, it's like I've been in this position since 2019, almost 4 years now. And as a result, like, I've developed an ear for like the shows and the shows I'm working on, and understanding the cadence of the host, understanding the cadence of the show, and knowing when I can kind of back away on the brain a bit and just kind of subtly focus on like, okay, are the levels set properly? And get that going. But also one of my other responsibilities is podcast production for them, because their shows for that day turn into a podcast later that gets uploaded. And so I'm also recording everything that's going on and editing that into a podcast as the show's going on. And so, like, all that comes together, which is why I prefer to call it technical producer rather than board operator. I'm not just a button monkey, guys. I do shit.
I guess that even in music, you can think of that. I suppose a board operator is like an engineer, whereas a producer is somebody is got the vision for the record here. It's like producing the show, which very much sounds like you're doing.
Yeah, like I'm not the guy who puts together the content for the show.
You're holding the whole thing together. You're running the show, basically.
Exactly. My job is to get the show on the air and sounding as good as possible. I'm literally a producer for the show, whatever show I'm working on. And that is an important role in the station. And that's something that a lot of people don't seem to realize when they actually, because most people listening to the radio, they don't hear the producer. They hear the host. So they don't think that there's another person behind the board, but there is. And that person is, like you said, holding this fucking thing together with duct tape. It's a necessity.
The thing that sounds crazy to me is the fact that it's live and it's all on a very strict schedule. You know, that's something you don't have that if you're the music producer or whatever. Maybe there's a deadline or whatever, but you know, you're not like this thing is live, it's happening all in real time. You know, it's that's crazy.
Oh yeah, and you have to hit like certain what are called hard outs, which is like you've got to get out of the segment and back into commercials at a certain time to meet within like certain scheduling. Like for example, bottom of the hour, we have our news broadcast we have to do at the bottom of the hour, which is like the 30-minute mark of the hour. And we have a couple commercials before then, so the host needs to get out before that time, at the time he's supposed to.
In the host's ear saying like, stop.
literally. I'm in the host going like 1 minute, get ready to wrap. And then once we're at the point, especially with the host I'm working with right now, where we're at the point where we should have already gone, I'm like, get the fuck out now. And stuff like that. Like that's something I have to focus on. And it's live, which makes it all the more, in my case at least, more interesting and challenging, which is something something that keeps me engaged. And it's something I always do enjoy. It's like it's a challenge every single day, but I enjoy it for that reason.
Yeah. Really cool, man. It's really cool to get that insight. Sounds like a really interesting job. And to be engaged in that process and for there to be, I guess, interesting conversations and stuff happening, like that's got to be, you know, stimulating in a positive way as well. That's it.
Yeah, but you also learn to tune that out most of the time, because especially if it's because it is political talk radio. If you're in a situation where maybe your politics are not aligned with the host, you learn pretty quickly to tune it out, except for when there's swearing that happens when it's not supposed to, because on radio you can't, radio and TV you can't swear. Like here, I can swear all the fuck I want, even if it makes no fucking sense. But
a lot of people still ask that, they don't know, do they? Like, you must get this on your show. People are like, oh my god, yes. And it's like,
yes, I get it so many times. Even from people who have been on before. Like my response usually is, you haven't been listening to a single fucking word I've been saying, have you? And but because on the radio and TV you can't swear. It's like in Canada, there's the CRTC that kind of that has the rules set.
You're gonna get like fined or something, I guess.
It's a fine, it's a hefty fine. And but thankfully we have like for live shows we have a dump button, because we're always broadcasting. It's live, but we're in a 7-second delay, give or take.
Right, got you.
So I'm hearing what we are producing.
Right, so someone
in real
swears,
time.
you're beeping out.
Exactly. And you learn pretty quickly. You can tune out the show if that's not something you're interested in listening to. Yeah. But the swears, they stick out like a sore thumb. Every single one. And so like I learned pretty quickly, like the rest of the show to me will just sound like the teachers from Charlie Brown. You know what I mean? Like I'm only wah, 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 wah,
I see.
wah, wah, hit the dump button as fast as possible.
I get you. Yeah, fair. I suppose it could probably get quite repetitive and stuff. I mean, is it like, you know, a diverse range of political opinions and people debate, or?
Sometimes yes. A lot of times the hosts will have like dealer's choice of like, hey, this is a topic I want to talk about.
Yeah,
I want to get certain people on.
Bias, I suppose.
Yeah, every host has their own bias, but the hosts have a diverse range of political views. I'm working with a guy right now who has who's more of a like right-leaning kind of person, which is fine. I don't swing that way politically, but that's something that's okay. I can deal with that. My job is not to question his politics. My job is to make sure that he's not going to sound like an idiot on the air and my job is to get him on the air and get him with the guests that he can discuss these political views with. Yeah. And so I learned to tune a lot of stuff out that I don't agree with. Yeah. It's just my job focuses on the technical aspect of the show, not the actual content that he's spouting out.
I get you. Yeah. Cool, man. I get you. Yeah, that's good. And it makes sense that you're doing this role. Like, it's really cool to get that context now, considering your own show, and the fact that you're the one clicking the buttons with the sound effects and going to ad break and things like that, because you have all that in your show, man, and it's so fun. That ad you did for like Homoousius and stuff like that, it's hilarious, man.
Like that's the thing is like I knew if I was going to do stuff like that, I knew if I was going to do ads like radio style ads, I didn't want it to be like radio ads that had to go through a CRTC censor bar, right? I wanted it to be like entertaining and match with the show. I didn't want it to kind of stick out like, all right, you just listen to the best motherfucking metal on the planet. We'll be right back. And then go into like, Temperax is a great tool to have. Like, no, it doesn't work. So I wanted even the commercials that I produce to match with the show. And so you get stuff like the Homoousius commercial. You also get stuff like when I was playing the commercial for Luthero, they had a live show coming up pretty soon. And I was like, hey, I'm going to make a commercial for them. Here's what I'm going to do. And it's still something that it can sound like a proper like music promo that you would hear on the radio, but it also still has that flair of like what you would expect from the metal robot. There's an entire portion of that ad. It doesn't run anymore because the show's over, but like not the podcast show, but the live show that was promoted.
Yeah, being advertised.
Yeah. And so there's an entire section where you just get like a very intense voiceover where it's like, doesn't matter where you are, get a fucking hot air balloon, get a freaking car, get your ass down here. No excuses. Like that kind of thing. And so like that's the kind of thing that you would not expect to hear on the radio proper. So these commercials, they are very much like they have the radio mindset of like, here's like, they are 30 seconds long. Let's get them like produced and like radio sounding, professional sounding, but it's very much not designed for radio. Just spiritually.
Exactly. It's almost like, I don't know if it's the correct way to say, because I think that it's so cool, but there's almost like a element of parody to it, I suppose. Like, that's kind of what it feels like, because it's so fun, but as you say, it is still like a professional radio ad, which is so cool about it.
It's got the mindset of a proper commercial producer that you would find at a radio station, but it's something that is put together for fun. It's in many ways, it's a parody. I never really thought about it like that. That's a great way to think about it.
I certainly don't mean it if that was to sound kind of derogatory anyway.
That's a great way to think about it, because in many ways it is a parody of like radio commercials. Because it's like most of them, like because I am in the radio station, especially now, every weekday, so I hear commercials constantly, and many of them have the same formula. They all kind of blend together after a while, even if they're talking about different things. So in many ways, like, it's a parody, but it's also like, it's something interesting. It's different, and it's actually got some fun comedy to it. It's not like cheeky comedy that you're able to produce only just to get it past the censors. This is something that you're gonna have fun with. It's something that the audience would actually resonate with, of like, wow, I was not expecting it to go that direction. Such as like the Homoousius ad. It starts off like it's a super dark, serious promotion, and then trying to pronounce the name.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's like a skit. It's so good.
Yeah, like you didn't expect it to go that direction. It's like a skit. Yeah, like those early YouTube skits, like when skits and sketches and parodies were like king on YouTube. Like from that time period, and that's something that I really enjoyed at the time. And so like, just bring it into the commercials here.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. And I think the other thing that I'm thinking about in terms of your radio background is, I guess it makes sense that you're listening so much and because you're producing these shows. But in my mind, like, you also have such a perfect voice for radio, right? And so are you speaking on the air much? Do you have other shows, other things that you do in radio where you're actually speaking, or is it all that you're just consuming so much?
So a lot of it is consuming, but I also do come on the air every once in a while, just for like jokes and bits every once in a while, like talking with the host whenever they decide to bring me on, or whenever I decide to jump in when I have something interesting to add. Like like a good example is one of the hosts on the show, on the station. He likes bringing on the producer for for a segment. Like on his show, he has something called names story of the day, where he'll like give 3 stories that are actually like proper news stories, but they're so ridiculous that you wouldn't think they're real. And he'll at the end, it's like, what's your favorite? And so segments like that, it's like when the host is able to bring on the producer. And if I'm producing for that show, I go on and it's like talking back and forth of whatever story is like in place. It was like, so in this story, this woman got so hammered and decided, hey, I'm going to pack a crocodile into her trunk and drive speeding down the freeway.
Wow.
And my response, was it in Florida?
Yeah.
No, surprisingly not in Florida. Like, so moments like that, like you get stuff like that on that show in those segments.
Yeah.
Or even something like another one he does, like shower thoughts. Yeah. I
someone write a song about that.
Please, somebody do it. I don't even think that's a real story, but at the same time, I'm saying it out loud. I'm like, it probably actually is, and I just did. It probably was in the back of my subconscious.
But it probably was in Florida, though.
it probably was in Florida. Yeah, that's the only difference.
Yeah, nice. That's cool. But so I think I don't know if I'm remembering that right, but do you have some kind of other show as well that you do with a friend, or no, that's you literally just at work, manning the desks or?
Yeah, so most of my so my job, in terms of my actual job, it's mostly it's wherever my time slot is. So I produce a lot of shows, but in terms of working with friends, I will sometimes go on other radio shows as the interviewee. So I've been on my buddy Sean Sexton, the Reverend Radio Show. I've been on Colin Sterling again, Thrasher's Paradise. He has his own radio show too. So I've been on those shows, but I've never actually been right at the moment, at least, I don't have another proper podcast or radio show that I'm working on. That is in current production that's being put together with friends. It's pretty much just where you hear me on on Metal Robot right now, and every so often on the commercial radio station, just kind of popping in hi.
Nice. And I know, well, obviously you know the guys from Blood of Indigo, because you had Nathan doing your thing. Working with you on your music. I remember them on your show a while back as well.
Yes.
And Alex, he did a similar thing, right? I remember he was a radio host interviewing metal bands or something. Is that something relevant to you in any way? Do you know? Because you're in the same area, right? Or
in many ways, yeah. I wasn't I did have a radio show in college, but I didn't interview bands on it. It was similar to what you would hear in proper rock radio, where it's a guy who's talking. If he's just by himself, he's just talking, he's having fun and doing stuff and playing music in between. So that was my thing. But in many ways, I do most people, most of my presence online is not necessarily with the music, with my solo work. It's with the interviews, it's with the podcast, it's with the review show. And so in many ways, I kind of see where that goes. But eventually he did end up, I don't know if he's still doing his radio show, but he properly transitioned into doing Blood of Indigo, which is that's really freaking cool, because Blood of Indigo is fucking amazing. And that is, that's in many ways I see the parallels, but at the same time it's he pursued music a bit further and I'm still doing the podcasting kind of thing. And eventually I do want the music to kind of take off a bit, but I'm okay with having the dual worlds kind of in tandem with each other.
Yeah, so you feel quite naturally drawn, I suppose, to content creation in general, I guess, as a start, but especially this kind of review podcast radio kind of thing. It seems very natural to you.
Yeah, because I've always been the kind of person who likes entertaining people and chatting with people about stuff I'm interested in. Even that's the thing about anybody who's an introvert knows, they're the quiet ones in the room. They're kind of in the corners of the room, just hands crossed. They don't want to interact with people, subtly hiding behind microphones, that kind of thing. But when you like start talk about something that they're interested in, like I'd be in the corner and all of a sudden, hey, that metal band was kind of cool. Metal bands, you say? Let me tell you something about metal bands, and like stuff like that. And as well, I've always enjoyed getting people to laugh. That's always been who I was growing up. And so getting into the YouTube realm where I've always been doing something comedic of some sorts, like there's always comedy infused in what I've done, and getting into talking about music, combining the two, that was a golden combination for me. And like it's something I've always liked doing, and talking about stuff insanely long is what I enjoy doing. So
nice.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems so. It seems very natural too, but like also I guess you've listened to so much music and been so immersed in that, and you're so passionate about it that you are fantastic musician as well, and a vocalist. Like I love your guttural vocals, man, just because like you have that kind of profile, like a Acapella kind of style, who is just like my favorite death metal vocalist. So I absolutely love that, man. Like Call to the Dæmon Sultan is an excellent record, man. Really excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, it freaks people out when they hear the growls for the first time.
Yeah, monstrous.
Well, especially if they know me through Metal Robot. Like I've told this story before, but when Lindsay Schoolcraft, who ended up being coming on to the Benighted one, when she first heard it, I met her doing my show for the YouTube channel, but from that point on, we become like, we're pretty friendly with each other. And early on, when in the demo stages, I sent her the demo for Faith in the Faceless. And I was like, hey, let me know your thoughts. Do you like, do you think the music's good? What do you think of the vocals? That kind of thing, like especially the cleans. Because I was really self-conscious about the clean vocals. But most of her comments at first, she responded back with, them growls.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that? And it she was like very excited to hear that, but also I don't think anyone was expecting that. No one was really expecting the growls to come through, in the way they did. Because again, most people, they hear my voice and they're like, oh yeah, this is the voice that they associate with me, the radio voice, the podcast voice, the YouTube voice. And then they hear me go like this. And they're like,
yeah.
What? How did that face do that? How? It doesn't compute for a lot of people, and that's what I find fascinating. And you know what? It is a good voice. I remember even the voice was like how I got a part of Homoousius in the process. Was I submitted the demo for Faith in the Faceless to Trey Xavier. At the time he was Gear Gods, doing the Friday live streams. GJ was in that was in the stream in the chat. He heard it and he's like, hey buddy, you want to join my project, my symphonic project? I'm like, sure, why not? And from that point on, it's a game over, man. We're going for the fucking hills.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, amazing, man. That's so cool, dude. So how did the EP come about then? Was it also, I guess, does that kind of come out of lockdown as well in terms of timeline?
Yeah, it started in lockdown. I had already had music going on. It wasn't, but those songs that I was already working on, they didn't make it to the EP. They're saved for something else that I'm working on as well.
Cool.
But the EP, that was something that I started working on, started with Faith in the Faceless. Because at the time, I was in such a place where I was like, I had recently discovered that I had ADHD and that everything was making sense to why I am the way I am. But a lot of the times, especially since I moved out of my parents' house at that time, I was living with a person who just did not get it, did not understand the way I did things, because everything had to be a specific way for her. But for me, it was very much it was very different because of just who I am, the way I do things. A lot of it came down to my previously undiagnosed and also unmedicated ADHD. And so it created a lot of tension. And because in many ways, like anybody with ADHD will tell you, they're more susceptible to gaslighting than a lot of other people in the neurotypical world. Like that became a huge thing where I was like, this ADHD is a huge fucking problem, right? It was in that stage where it was a very dark period of like, you could actually have me quoted as calling ADHD it's a mental disorder. You could have me quoted at that time calling it a disease. That's how dark it got. And so Faith in the Faceless kind of spawned out of that. That's what the song's about, is the darkness of ADHD. And from there, I was like also like still writing other stuff too, because I had a plethora of other riffs written for other stuff that was like, it wouldn't have fit with the song that with Faith in the Faceless. But I was like, these are kind of coming together. Let's start putting stuff together. I have a couple ideas for other songs. Let's start working on this stuff. And lo and behold, the Benighted one came through pretty quickly. Dishonored King came through as well. And the writing process was going on in the middle of recording, because once Lindsay came back with her stems, with her vocals, immediately the Benighted one was like, okay, got to rewrite an entire section of this because it just works this much better thanks to her. And it just came through that way. And the Benighted one transformed, and all of a sudden, like it all started coming through. And the intro, I could not find a good intro for Dishonored King. I could not create one, so I brought on Nathan Gross to help and told him like, hey, I'm looking for something like Lord of the Rings meets Lovecraft horror. Go forth and see what you come up with. And he came back with that. I'm like, perfect. And it all came together as a result. But it started with that time of that period of just pure like darkness at the time. And for a comedian to say that, that's sad, but it was a really bad time for me. And you wouldn't get that through my videos that were coming out at the time. Maybe the infrequency would have given that away, but the amount of you wouldn't get that in the scripted content in the videos I was putting out. You would get that through the music that would come out a solid year later.
Wow. So you were diagnosed with ADHD then, like very late, like as an adult?
Well, from what I understand, at the time, I didn't realize that I was not diagnosed yet, because it was something that my sister pointed out. Like, you have ADHD, because she has ADHD, and she I can't remember if she actually said it like this or not, but it immediately the assumption came that I was diagnosed as a child. I just forgot. And that was something that I was like, kind of at the time, because I didn't understand that, no, I was not actually diagnosed with ADHD. There were other diagnoses that were proposed at the time because there was a lot of behavioral issues as a child. And without getting too personal about it, without getting too deep into it, basically that like the whole story of like diagnosed as a child did not come through. It turned out not to be true, at least. And I got officially diagnosed when I was applying to get medication done. And that's when the diagnosis was officially made. I think the doctor I was talking to for the diagnosis, she probably got like halfway through her questionnaire and was like, okay, yeah, you definitely have ADHD, dude. I don't need to finish this. You're good. Like, we know you're like, this is obvious. And from then on, so I was diagnosed very late, and it explains so much of what was going on as a child. But yeah, it was a late diagnosis, and I didn't really find a way to get stuff sorted out and be able to find a way to work with the ADHD until years later. Right.
But it helps to have it diagnosed, I suppose.
In many ways, yes, because especially as a child, one of the downsides, and this is kind of depressing, so let's get the sad music in the background here. It's very like, as a child, if you know that you are different from other kids around you, like your neurotypical peers, and you know that there's something off about you, but you don't know what it is. Like, for me, it was a lot of behavioral issues where that was where the presenting was coming from.
It was more symptomatic, I suppose.
Yeah. So like, in many ways, I stood out like a sore thumb amongst my peers, and I didn't understand why. And so if I had known that I had ADHD at the time, not only would I have known, okay, I have an explanation for what the fuck is going on, but also I am able to work with it. I could have been on a prescription plan. I could have been on a medication plan or a plan to be able to work with the ADHD as I got older. But to get diagnosed after I'd already moved out of my parents' place and now basically on my own, that became a huge problem at the time. So yeah, in many ways, like if you have kids who have ADHD, or you think you have ADHD, then maybe they're presenting symptoms, do your research, take them to a doctor, see what they think, get a professional opinion and see where you can go from there. Because seriously, that will make things so much better for them. I promise you.
Yeah, I get you. I suppose that's where a lot of the difficulty can coming from. I guess if you feel there's something wrong with you that you don't know. Yeah.
Well, especially since ADHDers, like people with ADHD, they're interest-based learners. So school is especially affected. If you're not a person who's a fan of science or math, you're going to just absolutely hate it. And you're going to get bad marks as a result because you're going to be going through there. And as a kid, you're going to question whether you just don't like it or if you're just lazy or dumb. You don't want that because that affects your self-esteem later on. So seriously, if you think your kid has ADHD, get them diagnosed, get them checked out by a doctor. You'll get their professional opinion, go from there. It'll save them a lot of shit later on, I promise.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I can imagine. And I'm really, for the most part, quite ignorant on the situation, but I'm intrigued. And it seems as if like ADHD and these kinds of disorders are a lot more common in this day and age. Maybe that's wrong though. Like maybe it's that they're just being diagnosed more. What do you think about it? Why do you think that is?
Possibly the latter. A lot of the times, especially now, it could also be like nowadays people are more like ADHD is still a very unknown disorder. And even in people who are studying it, because a lot of the times people don't really know everything that's going on. The brain is so complex. We don't as humans, we don't even fully understand how complex the brain is. We know that there are certain areas of the brain that we understand, we grasp the concept, but the whole is beyond. We don't know the brain as well as we would want to. And so ADHD, as a result, being a mental disorder, it's something that people just are not fully picking up on, especially since there are so many different presentations. For example, you're talking about possibly more people getting diagnosed. There actually is an ability for doctors to overdiagnose young boys with ADHD, and ADHD girls get underdiagnosed because the presentations are different. ADHD, you think of they're hyperactive, they're inattentive. The boys are jumping off the walls. They gotta have ADHD. But girls, they're more like a kind of reserved, kind of shy kind of thing. You see them as more like a reserved, shy girl, but not somebody who's really struggling with ADHD. And that's something that's goes under the radar. And so that kind of thing that's probably part of it, but also a lot of it is we still don't know a lot about the brain and how it fully works.
I get you, man. I get you. And then I suppose there's that particular condition, but I suppose it's connected to a lot of things, right? And if you're generally in this state that you're struggling, then there's depression and anxiety and everything that goes with it, right?
Oh yeah, ADHD is especially undiagnosed ADHD. It is, if you leave it untreated because for whatever reason, either you don't know you have it, or because you or your parents don't take it seriously because it's ADHD. It's it's the freaking squirrel disorder, the squirrel, that kind. It's not it's not serious. You don't need to. Oh shit, where's the long list of diagnoses going? Oh my god, and it just spirals out of control from there because it presents so many problems. Because it's literally it has an effect on the brain more in general, but a lot of it is executive function as well, which is I don't know if I'm even qualified to even discuss what executive function is because I don't even think I really fully grasp specifically what it is, but it's sort of what's the way it's when you have come home from work and you want to just lie down on the couch and not do anything, you're unmotivated. A lot of that is because your executive function has been spent at work. It's because that's I could be even saying it wrong. You have to look it up proper to really
I get
understand
you
it.
though.
But
Yeah, I get you.
yeah, but ADHD severely affects executive function. And so a lot of that becomes a huge problem, especially when your brain starts to kind of jump to different places of, like, as mentioned, kids, if they don't know they have ADHD and they're struggling in school, they'll like immediately jump to, oh, I'm stupid, or oh, I'm lazy. That goes into depression of like,
full self-image.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, I don't want to do anything because I'm fucking stupid, you know? Or like, oh my God, I gotta do this thing now because it's due in 5 hours. Anxiety kind of thing. Like the stuff like that is like, it severely affects the brain in ways that most people don't really understand. And even a lot of doctors, they have an idea of, but they're still like discovering new things every day.
Of course, yeah, of course. Yeah, wow, it's a very interesting topic, man. I can tell that you're like a very deep thinker in general, man, because this topic and other ones that you've discussed on your podcast and things, that's really cool, man. But I suppose it's interesting because there's always this counterbalance. And, you know, whilst I'm, you know, sorry to hear that you've had these struggles, which I think a lot of us have. You know, a lot of people that are into metal music and stuff probably can relate to this thing of feeling like a bit of an outsider or different as a kid and things like that, you know? So we are the outcast genre. That's it.
Metal is the outcast genre.
Which is awesome, man. There's that sense of community and coming together like that. But you know, in general, there's this counterbalance of things. I think there's positives to take from that. You said about like you've kind of always naturally been a comedian, wanting to make people laugh. That's because you know what it feels like, man. To you know when stuff sucks, you know. So you want to bring joy to people's life, and that's awesome, you know?
Well, also ADHD does have its benefits. Like most ADHDers are inherently creative, which kind of came forth in the YouTube and podcasting. And so there is the benefit there. It's not all like bad stuff, right? But like regardless of what place you're in, it's not all bad. There is good to come with it. You
have to work how to channel it, right? It's more about how your mind works.
Exactly. It's like you're not like ADHD does not make you dumb. It just makes you different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like your way of processing the world is different from other people. That's okay. The goal at that point is to learn, okay, rather than trying to think like my neurotypical peers, like the people who don't struggle with, who don't have ADHD or autism or anything of that sort, they're not neurodivergent. You just got to learn to work with your brain as it is, because your brain, it does work. It's just working differently. It's like if neurotypical brains, their brains have it's like working like clocks. They have gears and everything of the sort, like pistons and everything. Yours works on magic, funny bananas. Like it still somehow functions because it's magic, but it also is like, it just works differently. You got to understand how it works differently. You understand what you work better with, because you do work better with something, and that go from there. That's what I had to learn. And I'm still learning that as I go.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. You know, I feel like I don't necessarily have a diagnosis like this, but I can definitely relate to the magic bananas.
Everyone's got their own magic bananas.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but I mean that, you know, I think you're a good testament of it, man, because like for instance, what you do with your work, I think it's a really good example of like you have put yourself into a position where the fact that you're live in that environment, that you have to be engaged, and that you have all these interesting effects and things that you can be pushing, and all of that is like, it keeps you focused and alert. And then also where you said about how you can just zone out of the actual conversation but still do this work as well. It seems like it's a very like perfect match for the kind of mindset you have.
Oh yeah, and especially like the technical production work at radio, that is the ultimate job for people with ADHD, because because we can hyper focus on stuff with podcast production, the sound effects and everything. But also in terms of my job, I need to have my attention in multiple different places. The time, I need to keep it on the clock. I need to keep an eye on the levels of the audio. I need to kind of passively listen to what the host is saying, but I also need to hear what I'm doing with producing their podcast at the same time. So my attention is in a multitude of different places. And with ADHD, that is extremely helpful. Your brain can diversify as much as possible because of the whole, squirrel kind of brain activity. It can get distracted, but it is able to kind of passively keep an ear out and an eye out on everything else that's going around.
Yeah.
It works really well.
As you say, you just have to find your lane, right? And I suppose that's where we can do with some guidance in life, you know?
Yeah, you just gotta find what works for you. Your brain does work. It just it just works differently. You gotta find out what works for you. Like what helps keep you focused, what helps keep you in your lane, and what works for you with what you want to do. And so that is something that I learned to do and still learning to do as well. But it's progress.
Awesome. That's good to hear, man. And the fact that you were able to kind of purge some of that darkness into the music is, really awesome, man. As I said, I think that it's a really fantastic record. You can hear that dark heaviness, and that's the beauty of music, right? The catharsis to be able to express that and get that out.
Exactly.
Yeah, man, the time is absolutely flown past like crazy, especially.
Holy shit!
I could speak to you all night, man. I want to start wrapping it up just because I'm sure you got plenty to do, man. I really appreciate your time.
I enjoyed talking to you, man. I mean, this entire time has been like it's fun to be able. Like I said, the time passed. I look at the clock and I'm like, how the hell? Where did it go?
I could happily keep chatting all night, man. Like you got a lot of interesting.
No, I feel like I could too.
I wanted to just ask that you mentioned briefly about some other kind of music. Have you got plans for new music, things like that coming out anytime soon?
Yes, I do. Right now, I am it's kind of passively being worked on, but I've got right now I'm working on a full length album.
Nice.
It's going to be a concept album. I'm still working on it and working on a way to be able to see what I can do with it, to see how I can produce it with the lessons learned from Call to the Dæmon Sultan and be able to get it out there and make it the best I possibly can make it. Hopefully that's going to sound good. I don't know yet, but we're going to find out.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for people to hear the results because so far it's come together pretty well.
Amazing.
Like it's basically done. I'm just kind of reworking it into a way that it satisfies me.
Nice.
So I'll see you in 2035. It's coming around. It's almost done. It's got to be tweaked a bit and then recorded and mixed and mastered and everything. So hopefully we'll get something soon.
Yeah, amazing. You're outsourcing mixing and mastering, or do you do that yourself as well?
I did so for Call to the Dæmon Sultan. I might outsource this time just because it's hard.
Yeah. Did a good job, man.
Oh, thank you. I do what I can.
Yeah, it is a challenge. Nice, man. And last thing is just that you mentioned about being quite content in the balance with music and the podcast and everything that you do there. What would be your ideal in the long run? Like what would your ideal life look like?
Honestly, the way it is right now is really good. But the ability to be able to kind of work further in music journalism the way I am right now. It's like get the podcast going off the ground, get YouTube off the ground, find a way to get those to more people, but also like having the music career does help too. Having that, especially since it does help with the reviews as well, having that behind the scenes experience with music, of making music, helps with the music review as well. So a balance between those two is still what I see, but I hope it goes out further.
I get you. Well, that's great to hear that you're already happy with the balance that you have and naturally just want those things to progress. I'm sure that they will, man. I'm sure.
I hope so too.
Certainly they will. And very quickly, man, I just remembered one last thing that I have to ask you. What's your favorite cereal box character?
How did I know?
Right.
Like you pulled out this is a very important question. It has to be asked. If you could be any cereal box character, who would you be? Oh my god!
I just have to give context to anybody that doesn't know that this is like your bogey question on your podcast, right? It surprises me every time. Every time I listen to the episode, I'm never expecting it, and then I get it again. I'm like, oh yeah, his question.
Oh man! Oh, like before I answer that question, like a bit of context further, like that started off as a joke question for Lindsay Schoolcraft.
Right. Nice.
Like that was like, because that was my second interview. I was like, hey, here's a joke question just to start everything out. And after that, it became the most important question to ever ask anybody.
Everybody's every guest we need to know.
I gotta go for. Fuck, I never actually thought about this before. Maybe.
How have you never thought about it?
Well, usually I'm the one asking the question.
Exactly.
I gotta go for maybe the Lucky Charms guy.
Nice.
Like, not to do with height because I'm fucking tall as shit, but mostly because I don't know. It's just, I love Lucky Charms and I'm fast.
Nice. That's as good an answer as any. I'm happy we settled that, man.
Yeah, glad we settled it.
Nice. Cool. I had to pull that one on you, man. So
I love it.
Nice. Cool. All right, dude. I appreciate your time so much, man. I've had so much fun chatting with you. We must do this again sometime, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. At some point I got to get you on my show, man. I got to get you on there. We got to talk
Awesome.
further about you this time.
Nice. Yeah, and maybe some more Avenged Sevenfold or something.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just carve out an entire hour.
Yeah.
Like
we'll just do an Avenged Sevenfold podcast. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Absolute pleasure, man. And yeah, keep up the great work, man. And catch you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating a Universe. A special thank you to Tom for joining me. I really enjoyed this one. Be sure to check out Tom's links at linktr.ee/TMCKAY715. Links will be in the show notes. That's all for this one. I'll see you next time.